Hello, Spark fans. Welcome back to Advancing Spark, where I am slowly recovering from a huge amount of jet lag from the Data AI Summit last week in San Francisco. And yeah, it was a crazy week with loads of announcements, lots of new stuff. There's a lot going on in the world of Databricks at the moment. So, as always, the plan is to walk you through some of the key announcements from the two main keynotes on the Wednesday, Thursday last week. Kind of share my thoughts, tell you what we're thinking, tell you what's going on. That's where we're at. As always, Advancing Spark brought to you by Advancing Analytics, your friendly neighborhood data engineering and AI consultancy. And yeah, if you're new around here, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And yeah, stay around. We talk about this stuff a lot. So, I'm not going to walk through the blog posts today. I've had to go through the keynote and screenshot various slides and pull them out into one place so we can go and have a look at it. So I have this thing put together, which kind of just talks through some of the major highlights from both days. Now, there is so much more in those keynotes that I'm going to get through. If you are interested, do go watch both of them. They're now up on YouTube. You can just go and watch the full keynotes. There's some really interesting extra sessions. As always, there's some super nerdy scientific sessions diving into the things. I definitely recommend the day 2 small language models one. Just super interesting to see what people are doing in the world of AI at the moment. But let's talk about the highlights. So this is like the nice view, a holistic view of what's going on in the world of Databricks currently. This is Ali Ghodsi's data intelligence platform slide. And as they were going through talking about various areas, they were lighting up these different bulbs of functionality on top of the platform. So we're talking about Mosaic and all the AI stuff. Anything Gen AI is under the big banner of Mosaic now these days. Notebooks, you've got all the normal functionality, Databricks SQL, you've got dashboarding abilities, workflows and ETL pipeline stuff, and DLT, which again, those two come together very closely. So lots and lots of different things going in there. But let's get up the giant slide of doom, which annoyingly I had to recreate by hand because I couldn't get a high quality version of this. So the font's slightly different. I apologize. It's fine. Some key takeaways. So I've got some deep dive slides on most of this kind of stuff that we'll dig into, but a few things that I don't really have any extra but trying to talk about. Number one on the list being this. So as a shock horror, the week or so before Data AI Summit, it was announced that Databricks was acquiring Tabular. Now, that might not really mean much to a lot of people unless you are deep into the open source file formatting space. So Tabular is run by the two guys who invented Iceberg, which is always seen as the big competitor storage format to Delta. People talk about Delta, they talk about Iceberg, they talk about Hudi, and Delta versus Iceberg was always this big thing that everyone looked at. Now, loads of keyboard warriors out on the internet since that announcement have been, oh, that looks like Iceberg's won the storage wars battle then. And I was like, what? How does that make sense? The guys who wrote Delta have brought the guys who wrote like Iceberg into the fold. That's surely a everyone's now on the same page story. And the keynote message was that it was it's not one side's won. It's a great. Now we've actually got the two sides talking to each other, working together with a common purpose. We can bring the two together. And again, the plan is they'll become fully interoperable. There is a plan in the future for them to just be a single storage format and does not to have this conversation again and again and again. So great messaging there. But no, Delta's not going away anytime soon, especially given this is Databricks and that is their flagship storage mechanism. But yeah, good to see. Loads of really interesting stuff. Really good session to kind of understand the future and what's going on there. The other one, the most ridiculous thing we've ever seen in a keynote is Matej Hari, a guy who invented Spark, up on stage talking about Unity Catalog, saying, yes, we are going to open source it, being very tongue-in-cheek, going, hey, look, when are we actually going to do it? I know we say these things, and everyone's like, well, when are you actually going to do it then? Then proceeded to live on stage, open up GitHub, click the make this repository public button, and make the thing open source there on stage, which is very cool. That is very much a mic drop moment in the world of nerdy tech open source stuff. But what does it actually mean? Why do you care if Unity Catalog is open source? If you're using Databricks and you follow their advice, you turn Unity Catalog on, you've registered all your tables there, what possible difference does this being an open source product have to you? And there's a lot of stuff in there. I mean, one, it means it's open to the world to contribute and collaborate, and will hopefully accelerate that product even faster than it has been going. So it can only mean good things if that product's getting more and having more stuff come into it and having outside innovation plugged in. But for me, one of the interesting things about Unity is vendor lock-in. So Unity Catalog, if you register your tables and say, please manage this table for me, it's going to give it a GUID inside the lake path. And that's always made people uncomfortable. They're like, oh, that means like Databricks is controlling the design of my lake. And if I've got other things looking at that lake and they're not going through Unity Catalog, not going through Databricks, they're going to find it hard to understand that lake. And that's a form of vendor lock-in. Yeah, you can get around it, you can map things to it, but gives me a bit of pain and worry having seen various different vendor lock-in things go south in the past. So this, for me, message going, well, you know, if the worst does happen, Unity Catalog's open source. Just switch out whatever you're doing, but you can still use Unity Catalog. You don't have to lose your lake design. That's a massive thing. So even if you're not big into open source, even if you're not looking at contributing, even if you don't want to have your own standalone Unity Catalog service, the fact that the element of Databricks that is the most vendor lock-in-y is actually now open source and you can take it with you and other things can build their own mappings onto it, great. Massively de-risks it, opens it up for everyone. It's a great story for me. So for any client, anyone I've spoken to in the past, it's gone, oh yeah, no, I'm not sure I want to tie myself too tightly to that. Yeah, you do. Absolutely. That just makes it a lot easier to have that conversation. Another one, again, we're saying it again, Delta Lake Uniform is generally available. So in Delta, that you've had the ability previously to turn on whenever you write into that Delta table. Not only does it make the transaction log for Delta, it can make a second copy of that transaction log in other storage formats such as Iceberg. So you can currently have your Delta tables interoperable between the two anyway, or at least readable by Iceberg. And this is, again, now GA, you can go and use it. And again, it's the same message as the earlier statement of they're going to be 100% interoperable. So good. Everything else, we've got more detailed stuff on. So let's dig into those other bits and pieces. Compound AI is super exciting. So again, it's kind of, we're talking about agent frameworks for a little while in the world of large language models. It's don't just fire one single hefty prompt to an LLM that attempts to understand it in a single shot and give you something back. Actually, you want to have a mixture of different agents saying, well, I'm going to go and run some SQL, get some results based on that. I'm going to go and run this thing. It breaks tasks down into a couple of steps and then executes them. So this whole idea of saying, well, actually, we can build out various different tools that will actually sort of come together and actually work with things. So there's a great demo. Do advise watching Casey's session during the keynote about how this stuff works, because actually it's super impressive. So this is putting together a question. It's tying together several things called tools. So I can make a tool which is just a quick SQL lookup. I can make a tool which is running a Python function. And then I can say, well, actually, you guys, yeah, no, you can build your own little LLM application, just hook into my tools that I've shared through Unity Catalog. And then that'll tell it this is where to go and look up things in my, run some SQL to find out information about my products. This is where to go and run some SQL to find out things about my sales, my reviews, or whatever it happens to be. It's essentially building something a little bit like a RAG framework, but in a slightly different architecture, but also plumbed into Unity. And yeah, really actually quite good the way they're stepping through, looking at the different decisions, looking at how it interpreted it on the fly. Cool. And again, super impressive, debugging a horrendous query with just a naming convention thing, but live on stage in front of thousands of people. Yeah, no, worked quite nicely. The other thing that we saw in that, which isn't really mentioned in the announcement notes, inside Marketplace, inside a lot of the pre-existing data that you get inside of Databricks, is now Shutterstock. So a massive archive of very high quality stock photos, which can then be used for image generation, which is, yeah, great image resource if you're trying to do any kind of image generation, now baked in. So yeah, pretty cool. Another thing we saw on the AI BI side, so AI BI, we saw two sides of it. BI is kind of the next iteration, looking at these Lakeview dashboards, and now kind of inside of this AI BI product. And essentially it's dashboarding. And again, just another step forward in terms of what dashboarding can do inside of Databricks. massive thing. You can now cross-filter between visuals, which is one of the massive things that's been missing from Databricks visualizations for a long, long, long time. So great, it's getting there, it's getting slightly better, it's getting more like just, again, it's getting closer to the level you expect it to be. But on the other side is the AI thing, and that's this thing called Genie. It's essentially setting up a room with your data and saying, okay, I want to make a Genie room, and I want to talk around this data. And then just being able to ask it questions, being able to interact it. Basically, ChatGPT style things, except baked inside Databricks with all of that context, the Unity catalog, the context for all of your data, query history that you've ran against it, any notebooks and dashboards and things about what people have done. And again, seeks clarification where needed is huge. So not going to hallucinate, not just going to assume something and make something up so it can give you an answer. It'll go, I don't know what that is. Can you clarify it for me? And the demo that was done on stage actually is very good for this, although vaguely terrifying. So I need to come down on where I actually sit with this. So recommend watching the demo, but you got this kind of thing of someone saying, I want to work with my data. I want to go and kind of ask it multiple questions, get some responses, ask it a question. And we've got this kind of thing of saying, well, how many people churned? Comes back saying, well, I can't tell you that because I don't know the definition of churn. Now that is like fanfares and trumpets in the world of being able to use natural language to query your data. If it doesn't know something, it's not going to make it up. It's going to ask for clarification. And then clarification is provided. Churns when we lose an opportunity, we don't win another after it. And actually then goes, great, okay, you've now given me a definition. I'm going to use that definition and then actually give you some answers back. And then, again, carrying on in the demo of saying, well, actually now show me churn in different things and continues to have the context of what that metric actually means. However, in the world of BI, I've seen KPIs and metrics and things where each individual person designing a dashboard comes up with a definition. What if the person provides a bad definition and then it remembers that and it gives them bad information from that? But the ability to have that conversation and to do things and just not hit a hurdle and just keep working with it and just explain it and just work with it to get where you want, it's great. It's just, I don't know what the wider societal ramifications of this are, but that as a demo is awesome. And there's another thing that kind of counters this, and we'll come on to a thing called metrics in a little bit, but it's still very, very cool. So AI BI, basically new functionality inside of Databricks. Part of it is the LakeView dashboarding that we've seen before. The other side is this Genie thing, which is allowing you to use natural language to query your data, as well as adding clarifications and semantic understanding as part of your chat, which is, fairly big. Quite big news. The other thing, serverless everything. So we've seen serverless SQL warehouses. We've seen a huge amount of traction around there. And then we've been hearing rumblings about serverless workflows. So if you're using workflows inside of Databricks and a bunch of different tasks and you're using it on a job cluster, you can now go, just switch it into a serverless cluster. The same is coming for notebooks. That's now announced, so that's now in preview. So if you're just running a notebook, you can just choose to use it in serverless mode. And there's a couple of things that actually means and a couple of different behaviors that comes from that. We'll go into that in a second. But yeah, a whole bunch of stuff, which for me, this is again, reinforcing this is why it's called a data intelligence platform, is the plugging in of AI across all of these things. So if you're using serverless, they can just actually switch around where queries are going to put it on the bit of compute that has the most capacity in a whole bank of serverless clusters ready to go. And just instantly, as in milliseconds or seconds, decide where that goes, scale things up, scale things down. It is impressive for actually sort of how well it can manage those workloads and capacity. The query engine, all the things they talked about last year with predictive optimization and kind of the ability for it to learn how people query data and just even further tune data retrieval based on those data access patterns. Again, super, really, really cool. It's going a long way. But on the other side, automatically laying out tables using liquid clustering. Forget partitioning. There's a big message of lots of liquid clustering is the way forwards. Forget partitioning. And actually, if you use liquid clustering, it means it can adapt and take different clustering approaches as the table evolves. Rather than partitioning, you'd have to rip all the partitions away and relay your data out if the shape changes and the partitions don't make sense anymore. Yeah, lots of really, really cool stuff. But so much of that is enabled by serverless. So much of the intelligent performance optimization stuff. I've written a query, and actually it can take that query, it can predict when actually it should scale things out to it. It can build a better query plan than I would normally be able to write, because all of that compute is on the Databricks side, managed on the Databricks side. Now, I mean, there's a wider philosophical point here of me as a data engineer. What do I do if there's nothing else for me to do because my queries run fast? And that's the knee-jerk reaction, right? Like, I know a load of very technical people who are sitting there going, I don't want you to take away all my options. I don't want you to take all of the things that I can do to make something go fast and just turn it into a black box. And yeah, that was my initial reaction. But what's my point if not to get data to people as fast as physically possible to help them make better decisions? And if actually bundling all this together means I can do that faster, I can get them data faster, it'll be quicker, it'll be more optimized, and I don't have to spend as much time tuning stuff. If stuff doesn't need tuning, it gives you more time to do other more valuable things. But as always with any of these innovations, the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, I don't like it. It's taking control away from me. But, you know, if you take control away from me and you do a better job than me, great. Thank you. Keep doing it. But we're going to see this as a rough patch of transition, right? The next 6 to 12 months, there's going to be this migration to push and go, just make it serverless. Don't talk to me about how many nodes your cluster has, what machine type it's on, how much RAM you have across your different boxes. You shouldn't really care. Just click a button. They'll figure out what kind of machines it should run on. They'll figure out how many of those machines to apply to it. They will juggle capacity across however many million boxes they've got behind the scenes. My query will go faster, and it'll all be good. The only question comes when you start twiddling, going, well, how do I choose? I don't mind if it goes slower if it's cheaper. Or actually, I want this to be really, really fast because it's a line thing. I don't mind paying extra for it. There needs to be enough control to do those things. But it should be a hell of a lot simpler to work with than it has been previously. And that can only be good to get more people on the system. Like, little minor tangential rant. Serverless is a great thing for what we do. It's just going to be uncomfortable for the techies who like lifting under the hood and having a tinker with the insides, because you won't have to anymore once it is actually fully mature. Cool. Speaking of maturity, Spark 4.0 is on the way. Now, it is currently just a preview release. It's not fully GA. It's not the full announcement of that during the session. We had Rim Chin talking about, obviously, the normal details behind what's coming. There's a few interesting things baked in there. The re-architecting of everything to use Spark Connect is super interesting about unlocking some of the scalability, allowing them to do a lot of the stuff they're doing with serverless. Loads of interesting things they're doing there. SQL ANSI mode on by default. So that used to be a thing you'd have to turn on. So you'd have to make a conscious decision. Yes, I would like you to run in ANSI mode, please, with all the behaviors, with all the functions and features that happens when you switch over. Just going to be default from Spark 4.0, which is interesting because that might be a breaking change for some people's SQL logic when, you know, if you previously didn't like divide by zero errors, you might start seeing some. But there's a whole bunch of other things in there, which I guess is going to be a whole dig into future videos when actually stuff gets released and we can start playing with it. Lots of things to do with Python functions, lots to do with things with being able to write your own data sources using PySpark, and so you can have custom read and write data sources for your data frames and inside of streaming. The variant data type is huge. So, don't know about you, I store lots of JSON as strings, especially for things like managing schema drift. I've got my rescue column using autoloader that will store any unexpected new attributes as a string, but it's actually JSON. Variant column, huge amount of benchmarking, massive performance improvements by storing it as a variant, not storing it as a string. And yeah, just lots of interesting use cases we can use for that. Loads of things in Spark 4.0, way more than is on that slide. But yeah, that's a future video. And then yeah, probably the biggest announcement, the one that has had the highest number of people asking me when can they get their hands on it. I don't know. I don't work for Databricks, but there's a thing called LakeFlow. So LakeFlow's big announcement at the end of the day 2 keynote, and it's a mix of different things. Ingest, so that is from the a year or so ago. Databricks bought a company called Arcion, and that is all about intelligent data acquisition. It's about going after your various different source systems, pulling data into your lake, landing the data, doing your data acquisition phase of your ETL. Now, there's live demo on stage of hook up to Salesforce, grab some tables, click go, and suddenly those tables are now replicating into my lake. Like, super easy, click a couple of buttons, make that work. Now, that is huge, because for so many architectures, there's been an assumption that that's not Databricks, and you use another tool for that. If you're in Azure, you use something like Data Factory to do your data acquisition layer, put it into a landing zone, and then start processing it using Databricks. You might be using Fivetran, might be using various different ETL systems specialized for reaching into various different source systems and pulling data out of it. Doing things like change data capture, working out change to efficiently pull increments across. That is what that is all about. And yeah, if it's a click a button and things just work and you don't have to build a load of retry pipelines and error management and schema re-evolution, there's a ton of complexity in there. And from what we've seen so far, looks super easy. Just click a few buttons out of the box inside of Databricks and it'll do it for you. Now, obviously at the moment, all looks a little bit too good to be true, but I'm very happy if that just works. That will make our lives so much easier and it'd be a massive, a huge leap forwards. But also just being able to do it inside of Databricks and not needing another bit of architecture, another bit of infra that we have to deploy alongside Databricks to manage that stuff. Again, the more it can do, the easier our deployments and systems work. Transformations, again, mix of things. Very much an evolution of Delta live tables, but also just making things a little bit easier and some more functionality baked in there. But also a nice click and drag designer interface rather than the DLT that we know and love, which is draw some pipelines, see what it comes out with, write some more code, see what it comes out with. The UI, click, drag, add a node, here's some SQL for it, connect to the next node, here's some SQL. Yeah, it just makes a lot of sense. It looks actually a big improvement from managing that stuff. And again, baking in workflows and job management and orchestration. So far, looks really, really good. Very early site at the moment. So yes, there's a private preview just for the data acquisition part of it. But we're going to be seeing things coming out around pipelines and orchestration. Don't ask me when. I don't know. Go speak to Databricks. But yeah, definitely going to be excited when we first get our hands on that and what we can actually sort of see and how much of the maturity and how much of the working at massive scale, massive criticality can we actually achieve with these tools. It might be it's great for some surface level, great for some small projects, hoping it's great for your big, meaty, thousands of tables, massive fail restart mechanisms required. If that stuff is all just out of the box, that is going to be a massive disruptor for what we do. But yeah, we'll see what that's like when it comes out. I think I wanted to mention, I've mentioned Unity Catalog going GA. There's a bunch of Unity Catalog things that were also either pushed GA or kind of getting closer to it as part of this. Attribute-based access control, ABAC, we saw mentioned with Unity a year ago. They mentioned that the preview is now actually starting for that. So if you wanted to detect certain kinds of data and go, oh, that's personal information, and tag it as various things and be able to apply some rules to it. There's a bit of information on the blogs. We've not seen a lot about it yet. But yeah, it looks super interesting. I know a lot of people are waiting for that. And the other thing that honestly caught me by surprise is a thing called metrics. Now, one of the things that always catches people out with the medallion architecture, you're talking bronze, silver, gold, it's always like, what happens before it? Isn't there like a layer before bronze, silver, gold? And then isn't there a layer after it inside of your BI tool where you have metrics, essentially? So if I have some data and I've landed it as a fact, I've got my star schema, so I've got my fact landed, materialized as data, but there's some things that you can't pre-calculate. If I want to pick the data up and then cross-filter and slice it by a few different things, and I have some calculations that need to be applied based on that calculation filter context, well, I can't apply that in my metrics layer. I could have some views, but that's really horrible. I'd have to pre-decide the views. So that tends to live in your BI tools. And that's what metrics is inside of Unity Catalog. Being able to have these calculations, govern these calculations inside of the Unity Catalog layer, and then actually use them in real time on our queries. Now, how it works, what it looks like, I have none of those details. Just, it's been announced, it is there, it basically is your semantic layer being moved into the Databricks context. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how that works and actually how functional it is and how it goes against more mature semantic layers, such as the whole DAX engine inside of Power BI. This is going to be very, very new. But again, at least it is in the context of our overall governance layer that is Unity Catalog. So it's going to be interesting to see how it actually fits in and what we can do out of the box, what the first versions look like. Yeah, it's exciting. And hopefully, if we can do a lot of real basic metrics in the Unity Catalog semantic layer, and then you've got DAX to do like the deeper, more complex ones that need the power of that engine. I don't know. But super interesting to go and dig into it and find out where it's going. So yeah, that is like a lightning stop tour through a load of the announcements. There are more things on the list. There are more things mentioned in the keynote. There's a lot of things that were announced that were in the sessions during the day that I've not even got to yet. So keynotes, definitely advise going and watching keynotes days 1 and 2. I'll put a link to them down in the description. Just getting that coverage of everything that is inside the Databricks Intelligent Platform these days, the Data Intelligent Platform. And yeah, there's gives you a bit of an idea about the direction that Databricks is going. There's kind of like 2 parallel streams. Last year, I was a little bit grumpy last year because everything was Gen AI, and there wasn't really much talk about, yeah, lakehouses are a bit more mainstream these days, but how do we just make them better? How do we just actually accelerate where we're going? This year, very, very balanced. So loads of things about Gen AI, the whole compound AI frameworks, the way we're actually sort of building these tools and just making them easier to use, whilst making them governed and shareable and part of Unity Catalog. Really, really cool. The exposure of Genie and allowing people just ways to just talk to your data and have it respond, but intelligently and not hallucinating and asking for clarifications. Very, very cool. The whole engineering side, Spark just getting better and better. Like there's more things going into it. Serverless is going to have massive benefits. I'm going to see that struggle with adoption as people go, no, but I like control. LakeFlow, huge amounts of stuff in there. Very early days, but looks super, super promising. And then things we haven't even spoken about. We've not even spoken about the real-time mode for Spark streaming. If you wanted to just go fast, there's extra, like basically a new engine or a new form of the engine for doing that kind of stuff. There is a huge amount talked about across the keynote. And yeah, okay. So it took them 8 hours. We've had 20 minutes, 30 minutes. That's not so bad to go through the key announcements. As always, let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me know which were the announcements that actually resonated with you. If you watched the announcements, if you attended Data AI Summit, which were the callouts that you walked away going, oh, that's big. That's going to make a change. That is interesting. And not everyone can say Matej just making things go live on stage. You know, there were other things that happened. Come on. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I've got a huge number of videos to make now, digging through all of those details. So I'll see you soon. Cheers.